You are listening to KarbTalk. My name is Finn. You might know me as Carbonic, and this is the show where my $10 and up patrons decide once a month for a topic for me to make a video about, giving my thoughts, talking about it in depth, and boy have I been bad at keeping up with these videos. In September, I got very sick and I wasn't able to record because my voice was fucked, and here we are at the end of October. I've been putting this off, but I am going to do 6 topics in one video just to get up to date, and it's gonna be good. Everyone's gonna love it. It's gonna be super funny. Everyone's gonna make so many friends. We're gonna hit it. We're gonna hit it. We're gonna hit it. We're gonna do it right now. Starting with a topic from Sketchy Nonsense, who wanted to know what my thoughts are on the fantasy genre. I actually wrote an entire script for a video about this, but it's bloated, and I also feel like I just need to get this over with, so I'm gonna incorporate some of that. I'm also probably going to upload that script on its own later, just so people can read through it. But generally, with my thoughts on fantasy, I think it's a misrepresented genre. I think it's kind of a bizarre thing to even classify as a genre, because based on original definition of the term, almost all fiction is fantasy. Merriam-Webster defines fantasy as a creation of the imaginative faculty, whether expressed or merely conceived. Under that definition of fantasy, imagination is fantasy. Literally anything is fantasy that isn't real, so long as it isn't a non-fictional, non-biased account of events. It is fantasy. And I think it all comes back to just everything goes back to Tolkien, who wrote a pretty good fantasy world, which happened to be based around medieval mythology and relating to stuff like dwarves and elves and other stuff, and that really molded the modern idea of what fantasy is. Some people like to refer to this as high fantasy. I feel like that's a bit of a weird term to give it, but at the same time, whatever helps classify it. When it comes to stuff like these genres, I find myself having a hard time working with them, and I think it becomes a problem when I think about my own games. I don't know, you could really define Dashboard as a science fiction. There's a lot of high technology type stuff put into it. It takes place in a kind of space-based setting. However, I would not call it science fiction. Nothing about that is based in science. It's all just imagination and magic and weird shit, so I would definitely call Dashboard a fantasy, along with most other things that are called science fiction. I don't know, I think that the term science fiction is actually worse than the term fantasy, because you end up with all of these things where people are like, oh, this is soft science fiction and this is hard science fiction, because this one doesn't obey the rules of science and this one obeys some of the rules of science. But that's where you get the problem, because at the end of the day, science fiction exists as a series of abstractions from our real life experience of science, and is therefore not really based in science at all. You could just be like, oh, well, Star Wars is science fantasy, but Star Trek is science fiction. Ugh, it's so fake feeling to me. Personally, it reeks of people trying to feel better than one another. Oh, well, this one feels a bit more scientific and a bit more intellectual, and therefore I am smarter than you. I don't know. I personally don't like any of these genre terms. I feel like it's just and at this point it doesn't even matter. All of them just refer to an aesthetic. Fantasy refers to a vaguely magical medieval setting, and science fiction refers to just a space aesthetic and a space age aesthetic. So I guess this doesn't really matter. In terms of which I prefer, it really depends on the time that you ask me. Sometimes I'm really into kind of sciencey stuff, sometimes I'm into more fantasy stuff. But overall, I'd have to say I probably prefer weird fantasy stuff, 'cause there's a lot of science fiction, that kind of science fiction aesthetic story type thing, that I just can't get into. Like Mass Effect. I don't like the aesthetic of Mass Effect. It's just Look at these highly polished space ships. And I don't know, I mean, Mass Effect is a game that is all about finding the personalities and humanity in various different characters and being able to form bonds with them. But I feel like the aesthetic of the games actively runs against that because it's so cold, uninviting, and just does nothing in Mass Effect looks like a place where people live. It all looks like places where people rendered a sci-fi ship. So, I don't know. That's what my thoughts. Those are my extremely pedantic and vague thoughts on fantasy and science fiction. I'm not sure if that helps at all. I don't know. Also, I find it odd where something that takes place in space is immediately science fiction. I mean, I don't think space is inherently scientific. I don't know. I also don't like the term science fantasy. I don't like the term science fantasy because it's often used to talk about some sort of thing that takes place in space that also has spiritual deviations in the plot. And usually, I feel like that stuff just doesn't need science tacked onto the name because that's just straight fantasy. It doesn't matter that it takes place in space. None of this has to do with science. And I don't know. Here's the thing. I would not enjoy a real science fiction story. I feel like if someone made a true science fiction story where it's entirely based in the real realm of science, it would be so boring to read. It would be absolutely lame, and it would only appeal to a very small demographic of weirdos who enjoy stuff like that. So take that, fantasy and science fiction. Go to hell, fantasy and science fiction. I hate you, fantasy and science fiction. Ugh. It's time we just accept that we only care about the aesthetic of stories and we're not trying to get some sort of high science type thing out of it. I hope you enjoyed my rant. Let's move on. Here's another one from Sketchy Nonsense who wanted to ask what my thoughts are on apocalypse media. And I don't know, I think I can enjoy a good apocalypse story. At the same time, I feel like the biggest part about apocalypse media is that it's highly reflective of the society from which it comes. For instance, you'll see a major difference in pre-9/11 American apocalypse media and post-9/11 American apocalypse media. Because beforehand, you'll see a lot of stuff where it's buildings being blown up and aliens coming from outer space and destroying the planet and, oh, America's falling and stuff like that. And after 9/11 happened, people got really freaked out by that type of media, and, like, you weren't allowed to show a building being blown up in anything for a while. And I think that's one of the main things that led to zombies being super popular in the mid-2000s, because zombies are an apocalypse on a very small human scale. You're being attacked by possessed or infected people. It's a horde of people coming for you rather than this sort of unknowable threat that suddenly destroys your building, which I feel people weren't really into after 9/11. If you look back in time, you'll see just various different stuff. For instance, I feel like there are two different types of apocalypse media. One of them being subversive, and the other being just sort of a kind of blanket to hide away from reality. And I would say that zombies are an easy escape from reality apocalypse media in a post 9/11 America, like a mid-2000s, is a very, very much an uncomfortable apocalypse media for people living in a society like mid-2000s America. You'll also see this going back to the 1960s with stuff relating to nuclear destruction. We have weird stuff that stands to freak people out like Doctor Strangelove versus, I don't know, zombies. It was zombies back then. It seems like zombies is what the world goes to when we want to ignore the possible real apocalypse that might be happening. It's just always like, hey, let's ignore apocalypse du jour and let's go back to some good old-fashioned zombies. Those are fun. I think another thing why zombies appeal to that type of society, one that's on the kind of brink, even if it's not really on the brink, is that zombies are a fightable threat. You can fight a zombie, you can kill a zombie, but you can't fight a nuclear bomb. Overall, I don't know. I personally am not the biggest fan of apocalypse media. It just doesn't completely appeal to me. And yeah, that's all I have to say about it. I think apocalypse media for me is more interesting to experience and read into the implications of, rather than to actually watch or have time with at all. Coming up next, we have a topic from Dev Aesthetic, who wanted me to give my thoughts on the upcoming game Other Her Loving Embrace. I hadn't heard about this game until I was asked to talk about it, but I went out and I played the demo, and I ended up enjoying it quite a bit. I feel like it's gonna be, unfortunately, compared a lot to Undertale, though if we're making that comparison, I'd say it's a lot more like Deltarune in terms of tone and just appearance. However, I feel like that's mainly an aesthetic thing, just because it has a sort of similar battle system where attacks are handled in an action-y way. In this case, the battle system uses a sort of hack and slashy platformer type thing for attacks, and to be completely honest, I much prefer this to Undertale. I played through Undertale, and I played through this demo, and I gotta say, I think the combat is a lot more enjoyable in this game. It feels a lot more in depth, it feels more interesting, and yeah, no, I enjoyed it quite a bit. This is the story of a young boy who gets taken in by a foolish wizard to go on some sort of quest to help with some evil spirits who have been invading. So far, I've really liked the characters. I especially like the design of the wizard. He's got this unique kind of mask with these 3, I think, slats in it. It looks pretty cool. It's a fun design. It directly appeals to my design sensibilities. And I also just kind of like goofy dumbass characters like that. I'm interested to see where it will go. I'm not sure if this is going to take just a fun sort of goofy experience type thing, or if it's gonna turn into a more dramatic thing as time goes on. Given one scene that I saw in the demo, in the portion of the demo I played, I feel like it's probably gonna go dramatic at some point, and I'm kinda into that. I hope the knight doesn't die or turn evil, because I like him a lot. On top of that, I enjoyed the OST quite a bit. It's a very solid OST, though I will say it's not a completely groundbreaking or unique one. I had a lot of memories of Shovel Knight's OST, where I feel like it's a good soundtrack with good tunes and good sound to it. It's a very high quality one, but don't expect anything experimental in any way. This is a soundtrack that does its job and does it well. I overall enjoyed the atmosphere in the first starting tutorial area of the game more than I did any of the other areas. I really liked the color palette of that area. It was muted and kind of bluish and dark, and as soon as I got out of that forest, it was like my senses were being assaulted on all sides by just the brightest fucking colors that have ever been shown on my display. I hope that they go back and sort of make those other areas a bit more appealing in color palette, because I feel like they're just a bit too saturated right now. But overall, that's my main complaint. I enjoyed the writing, the characters seemed charming, the design seemed nice, the battles were fun, although I will say, I think that the first few enemies in the game have a bit too much HP for opening enemies. It can take upwards of a minute or so to kill an early enemy, and that adds up when there's a bunch of just like early mooks that you have to take care of. So there's a bit of balancing stuff, but overall it seems solidly designed. I liked the puzzle designs. They were simple. They weren't going too hard as to become Baba is You puzzles, but they were still enough to just be a fun little distraction. They weren't like the puzzles in Deltarune where they're absolute jokes and they just serve to not even make you think. I enjoyed playing this demo quite a bit. I'd recommend you go and check it out. The name of the game is Other, Her Loving Embrace. It seems pretty promising in terms of everything that I saw. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It seems absolutely solid, if not anything you haven't seen before. Check it out. The other thing that Dev wanted me to talk about was the current state of memes. And I'll be honest, I don't like where we are with memes. I think we're basically in a new form of 2009 through 2012 where you just take the basic meme and slightly edit it and then you repost it and you're like, hey, look at this funny joke I made. I feel like looking back, we were in a sort of golden age of memes between 2013 and 2016, even though looking back on the memes, I don't find them funny anymore because they're old and they've been done to death. I just feel that looking back, people would just take those memes and run with it. They would make entire animations and huge videos. I guess this creeps into 2017. We had pretty long form memes back then, and just pretty crazy takes on how memes should be made. And I feel like we're pretty much devoid of that now. There's still people who go hard on meme production, but it feels very much like it's died down to just basically exploitable memes, where it's just, here's a picture, put a new caption on, bottom text. It's boring. And I gotta say, since I moved to Twitter, I used to work mainly out of Tumblr to advertise my stuff. Since I moved to Twitter, I have seen the worst meme culture I have ever experienced on the internet. People on Twitter need to wake up and realize that reaction images are not memes. You are not funny just because you use a reaction image that everyone else has used. People will go onto fucking posts and they'll post the exact same reaction image to everything. It doesn't matter what the content of the post they see is. They'll just be like a picture of Thomas the Tank Engine that said Thomas needed to leave. He had seen everything. Something like that. They'll just put it over and over again and they'll just go, I said the thing again. And that is just pure brainlet memes. That is just absolute dumbassery. And I am having none of it. If anyone posts that kind of shit on my posts, and they have when I did those fucking things of the starter Pokemon of the upcoming Sword and Shield Pokemon games, I drew them all getting their heads squished like they were made of putty. And oh my god, I got so many replies to those posts that were just the same fucking reaction images. Oh, that's cursed. Delete this. Wow, boy, aren't I funny and original for posting this image that everyone else has posted and that I have posted on every tweet that I have seen today. I'm mad about this. This sucks. I have not seen a meme that has made me laugh in at least a year and a half. And I gotta say, that's pretty depressing. I hate that. And everyone, when they're just like, oh, there's been funny memes lately, they're like, hey, remember Sans? I'm like, Sans isn't funny. That's a 2015 meme. That's like a 4-year-old meme. That's not a 2019 meme. That's not a 2020 meme. I don't know. Hopefully we'll have a 2020 paradigm shift and we'll see new memes coming out, people making new long-form memes, making new creative memes. Or maybe we'll just stop making memes in general and we'll start making jokes. We'll just start making funny videos. I'm actually pretty tired of memes in general. I'm tired of just people seeing, hey, here's a joke I made, here's an original joke I made, and then 42 billion people being like, oh, that's a pretty good original joke you made. I'm going to just make the same joke and act like I'm original too. Fuck you. Go to hell. Make original content. Learn how to do stuff. I'm fucking done. I'm done with this shit. Moving on. I'm not talking about memes anymore. Okay, so the next one comes from President Baker, a personal friend of mine who wanted to know what I thought about card games, specifically stuff like Magic the Gathering, and like card games that you play and you collect, collectible card games. And I have very mixed feelings about that type of card game. Personally, in my experience, I enjoy the collection aspect of these card games more than the actual playing part of those, just because whenever I try to get into a card game and I ask someone to explain, hey, how do I play Magic the Gathering, or how do I play, I don't know, Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, or any one of these card games, they just go into this spiel of like all of these rules, and it's just pure talking for an hour straight about how it works and what I should do and how I should start, and it's just like, ugh. You don't have this problem with classical deck of card games. It's only when all of these rules come in, and it's just, I don't know. I think one of the biggest problems with these card games, these tabletop card games, is that they've been designed to a point that they are completely functional in a completely not fun way. Like, you cannot break these games because they have thought about everything and they have covered every base. And at that point, the rules are so rigid that it's just not fun to even play. Because you're just constantly trying to do something and someone will be like, well, actually, don't do that. I don't know. I also think Magic the Gathering does this thing. I'm not sure if this is standard, but I think it's fucked. Magic the Gathering does a thing where every year, every single card in the game is invalidated and you have to rebuy them. They reprint them and you have to rebuy them, and I think that's absolutely bullshit. I think anyone who goes along with that is allowing themselves to be completely fucked over in a monetary way. That is totally, I think, morally reprehensible as a sales tactic. Anyways, to sum up, my brain's stupid. I'm a brainlet. I cannot handle rules, and I freak out, and I just want to look at the pretty picture on the card. And this has gone on my entire life. I remember I used to be into collecting Pokemon cards as a kid, and people would be like, hey, do you want to play the game? I'm just like looking at these energy cards, and I'm just like, I don't want to fucking do this. I just want to go and buy some more. And I remember being in like a restaurant, and some kids came up to me and they started trying to explain to me how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! I was just like, my brain too stupid for this, and I just kind of shut down. So yeah, I mean, people seem to have a lot of fun with these card games, and I wish I could get into them, but my brain is just not on the level where I can handle it. Take that with what you will. Maybe I'm just a dumbass. And then President Baker asked one more question, and this is the final question for this video, which is a simple, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? And oh boy, I hope you're ready for me to deviate from talking about cool topics, because I'm just going to complain for a bit. Right now, I am in a liminal place in my life. I am not making my monthly rent. I am in a state where everything is just kind of not great, kind of shitty. I'm not enjoying it personally. It's high stress. It's very stressful to have to explain to my landlord, hey, I'm gonna be late with my payment. I gotta wait for my paycheck to come in. They're not really paying me enough, so I'm gonna have to do a couple commissions and maybe throw in a couple things and beg some people on Patreon to donate some more. I don't personally like that. It's not a situation I'm enjoying. So right now, I'm in a state where I'm quitting my job. I'm looking for other jobs. I'm trying to get to higher places, but it doesn't matter. The only things around here are retail positions, and anyone who's ever worked retail knows that it blows. It's absolutely terrible, but some of them pay more than others. But then you're like, hey, I want to be this deli boy. I cut the meats. And they're just like, well, do you have 5 years of restaurant experience? And it's just like, no one in the world has 5 years of restaurant experience who wants to work in a deli in a grocery store. That is not going to happen. That is straight not going to happen. So I don't know what tree you're barking up, but it's certainly the wrong one. Anyways, on top of that, more complaining, I have had a rodent problem in my apartment for the past 6 days. This is probably the thing I'm most angry about. I hate mice, mainly because of this situation. I didn't care about mice until now, but now that they're in my house and I've managed to kill about 6 of them, I have come to the conclusion that they are the absolute worst animal on earth, maybe even worse than deer, because they get inside your house. Oh boy, let me tell you, I did not know that mice could easily kill you before I did the proper research on how to take care of them. What happens is that they have a very deadly virus that exists in their fecal matter, in their droppings, and when they poop, they usually poop into a small corner that's hidden, and it eventually turns into dust and becomes airborne, and you breathe that in, and you die within a week. That is what happens when you get mice inside your house. That is what happens. It's stressing me out because I'm a total hypochondriac, and I know that in my mind I'm going to think I'm going to get it. I think I'm dying. I think I'm constantly like, ugh. And then I come into my house and I'm like, it smells like mice in here. It fucking smells like mice in here. I'm going to die in my sleep tonight. Anyways, fuck mice. Here's a gross story. You might want to cover your ears if you're not into squickish stuff. So, snap traps for mice are designed to quickly snap around their necks and immediately break their spine, killing them instantly. However, the other day, I had a mouse that didn't quite trigger the trap correctly. So instead of snapping onto the mouse's neck and killing it instantly, the trap snapped down onto the mouse's head, which caused the head of this mouse to explode all over my kitchen floor with gray matter and bones and blood, and it was awful, and I had to clean it up by hand because there's just this exploded mouse brain all over the place. It was awful. It was the worst. Don't deal with mice. If you ever get them, just call an exterminator and have them deal with it. Fuck this. I need to find where they're coming from. I cannot find, for the life of me, any holes they'd be coming from. This apartment's pretty clean, but fucking hell, there's mice now, I guess. There's fucking mice now. Fuck them. In terms of positive things, I'll just say that I managed to get out my dashboard update. I'm feeling pretty proud of that. I kind of went into a state of psychosis with that where I was just working on it constantly. I need to get back onto working with Leave Earth. I think I can get that done pretty quickly, and I kind of need to. On a positive note, I've completely figured out the plot line for Dashboard 2. It's going to happen at some point. I've completely written it down. This is going to be my Half-Life 3. and it's all figured out, but I've got a few smaller games that I need to finish leading up to that game. So I hope you'll all bear with me in that, because I think this is going to be a much more interesting story and a much more interesting game than Dashboard 1 was. I'm hoping to top myself in this, because I feel like with Nashboard, which came out earlier this year, that's more of a sidestep. That's a thing that's a companion game to Dashboard 1. That's not a new game in the series. That's like a spin-off type thing. And it's important, but it's not satisfying the same gameplay loop or the same exploratory thing that Dashboard 1 had. So I'm hoping to make a very interesting, very enjoyable game with Dashboard 2 whenever I get started on that. I hope you're all looking forward to Leave Earth. It's going to be important. It's going to be plot relevant. It's going to have some interesting stuff, even if that's not all happy stuff. It's going to be dark. It's going to be weird, dark, bizarre, creepy, and yeah, so that's what I'm working on these days. And last but not least, I want to end off with a story that I think is pretty funny in retrospect, but was absolutely hell to live through. And this happened a few days ago. So, last week or so, I didn't realize that my apartment even had inbuilt heat, because I couldn't find the thermostat. It was hidden behind a painting. And so, what happened was, it was extremely cold in my apartment, and I would wake up every morning feeling stiff, stale, and awful because I had been freezing all night. And I woke up one morning feeling awful, and I said, that's enough. It was probably like 7:30, and I said, I'm going to go get a heater. I'm going to get a space heater from Walmart. And so I drive to Walmart. It's early in the morning, and I go in, and I get 3 items. I get the radiator, the portable radiator. I get socks because my feet were cold and I couldn't find any socks, and I get bananas. Now these items may seem unrelated, but they will eventually all come together to make my life a living hell. So, I have my socks, I have my bananas, and I have my heater, and I go up to the self-checkout, and no one's really around. So I go and I scan the radiator, it beeps, it goes in fine. I scan the socks, it goes in fine. Then I scan the bananas. Approval needed. And I think, oh my god, these were special bananas. Oh, fuck. I bought special bananas again. But no, they were just normal bananas. And I just think, fuck. Okay, fine. I'll wait for someone to come and just cancel this. So I'm waiting there for probably close to 4 minutes, and no one shows up. At one point, I see this lady coming over, and she sees me and just turns around and walks off. And I'm just... So I get up, and I walk over to another checkout. I'm just like, fuck it. I'm just doing this again. And so I scan the radiator, goes in fine. I scan the socks, goes in fine. I scan the bananas, goes through fine. I weigh them, it goes into the bag, it's fine. And I get my receipt, I pay for the items, and I'm walking out. And I give it to the guy at the exit. I give him the receipt, and he says, okay, you're good to go. He gives me my receipt, and I'm walking out. Everything's fine. I'm feeling happy. Everything worked out. Then suddenly, this Walmart lady starts dashing at me out of the blue, and she grabs my cart, white knuckling it, and she stares me in the face of only a few fucking inches away, and she goes, "You're not going anywhere." And at this point I'm like, excuse me? What is happening? I saw what you're trying to do. So apparently this lady had seen that I had left this other register open because it was frozen, and had assumed that I was trying to steal a radiator, some socks, and some bananas. And I said, oh no, there's been a mistake. I actually went to a different register. Here's my receipt. And I show her my receipt, and she goes, no, no. And she snatches the receipt out of my hand and then points at this younger employee and says to her, keep an eye on him, and then marches off with my receipt. And I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck? What is happening? I don't even have my receipt anymore. This sucks. So I'm waiting there for probably 2 minutes, and then this older manager lady starts walking up. Okay, maybe she's gonna fix the situation and make everything clear. Nothing's gone wrong here. It'll be fine. She walks up to me. Sir, we're gonna have to ask you to leave. Excuse me? I'm gonna have to leave? And I'm just like, no, I bought these things. Either you're gonna give me a refund on these, or I get to leave with my items because I bought them. You're not gonna fucking make me leave without the items I paid for, because this radiator was $70 and I'm not losing that much money. And this lady stares at me for a second, and then she stress sighs. She goes, okay, fine, come to the customer service desk. And so we walk to the customer service desk, and and they stare at my receipt for close to 5 minutes. They just can't figure it out. I'm trying to explain the situation, but nothing's going through to their brains. And eventually the manager lady turns to me and gives me my receipt and says, okay, I guess you can leave. Don't fuck up the system next time. And I just stare at her in silent, seething contempt. I don't think I've ever hated someone as much as I hated this manager and this employee. I don't know what was going on with them. Anyways, I'm leaving the store, and I realize, oh, I was gonna buy some other items. I was gonna buy a pizza. And I'm like, fuck, I forgot to buy a pizza. But I'm not going back in there. Fuck that. So I get into my car and I drive to the other side of the city where there's a Kroger so I can buy myself a pizza. And at this point, I forgot to mention, I wasn't wearing socks during this whole thing because I couldn't find socks. And at this point, my feet are chafing pretty bad. They feel pretty terrible. So I decide I'm going to put on my new socks that I just bought before I go into Kroger. So I open the trunk of my car and I get on the rim of the car, and I'm sitting there putting on my socks. I don't have shoes on. I feel vulnerable. I'm out in the open cold air in this parking lot, and I'm putting on my shoes, and I see this shadow coming straight at me. I see this shadow just like beeline right at me on the asphalt. And this is a parking lot where people have been mugged before, and it's also a parking lot where there have been some pretty aggressive panhandlers, pretty angry, somewhat dangerous panhandlers. So I'm thinking, oh god, I don't have my shoes on. I'm in my trunk. This is bad. I'm gonna die. Oh no. Oh god. And so my neck snaps up at this person coming towards me with probably the most psychotic face of I will kill you if you take a step closer to me I've ever had. I probably looked like a total psychopath sitting in the trunk of my car, and the person coming at me is my film teacher from high school. He saw me and he wanted to say hello, and he sees the look on my face and he just goes, okay, good to see you, Finn, and just walks off and leaves. And I'm just sitting there stunned in the trunk of my car, horrified at what has just occurred. So that was how my morning went. That was how everything occurred in my morning. Everything leading up to this situation. And this was all before probably 8 a.m. So what a way to start a day, I gotta say. Ugh. Anyways, that's how I've been. If you guys want to say how you've been in the comments, I'd love to read that. I hope you've enjoyed this extra long, extra unscripted, extra fucked episode of Carb Talk. 6 topics in the bag, ready to go into November. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me. I enjoyed talking. It was fun. It was fun. It was fun. You're the best. You're the best. What did you think of this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? Anthony Fantano, Carb Talk, puddin' in pie. Good night, everybody, or good morning if you're in a morning hemisphere. Have a good night. 42 minutes on the clock. Bye.